Hello everyone. In this video we are going to talk about what Outbox Pattern is. Outbox Pattern is one of the most popular message delivery pattern, and with this pattern we can successfully publish messages at least once. And I say at least, and we will see the reason later in the video. First, let's start with an example and see what problem Outbox Pattern solves. In this example, we have a user endpoint, and this endpoint gets an ID from the client and then suspend the user. For that, we first get the user from the user DB and check out if the user really exists, and then update the user. For example, we have a is suspended column and we are setting that column to true. So we have suspended the user. And then we can publish a message and let the other teams know that we have suspended the user, right? So we can publish a user suspended to a queue. But let's say at that moment the queue was unavailable. For example, Elon Musk bought the company and fired some developers from the CDN messaging team, and that's why maybe the queue is unavailable. Who knows? So whatever the reason is, the queue is unavailable and we can fail at publishing the messaging, right? And this is a problem that can be solved with Outbox Pattern. How? As you can see, we don't have to actually publish user suspended at that moment. Under a single transaction, DB transaction, we can update the user and insert our user suspended message to an Outbox table. And later, another project called, for example, message publisher, an application can read that data from the Outbox and publish that message to queue later. And this is how actually, in essence, Outbox Pattern works. Now let's dive into the code. Okay, this is our user's controller. This controller injects data context from the constructor, and this is our endpoint. This endpoint gets the ID from the URL and check the user if exists by ID, and then creates a transaction. Okay, we are actually setting the is suspended true and committing the database, and then we are creating our user suspended message, right? This is just an ID. We are just saying this user ID is suspended. And if we wouldn't use Outbox Pattern, we will just publish the message directly, right? But with Outbox Pattern, we are actually creating an Outbox entry for like this, and body is our actually message itself. And created date is now. Status ID is right now started. This is because the initialization, and we will talk about the other status later in the video. And that is it. We actually created our Outbox entry. We are inserting our Outbox to Outbox table and then commit the transaction. So let's suspend the user, right? Okay, the project is up. Now let's hit a post. And okay, now we are in debug. So we get the user and check if the user exists, and then creating a transaction, setting our user to is suspended and committing to database. We are creating the object and then creating our Outbox entry and inserting the Outbox to our Outbox table and commit. Okay, so what have we done right now? Let's check our database. This is our database. We have suspended our user, right? So let me refresh it. As you can see, now the user is suspended. And if we look at our Outbox table, we have inserted an Outbox entry, right? When I reload the page, yes, right now we have a message. This is our message. If you remember, this is ID. Status ID is right now it's started, and we will talk about these columns later in the video. Okay, right now we have created our Outbox table, but we still haven't actually published our message to queue, right? If you remember, we have a publisher application that gets the data from the Outbox table and publish that message to queue itself. And this is our second project. So let's get to that project. Okay, that project is Outbox message relay project. Right now I'm in my program CS file. So in this project, we are using actually Quartz and rabbitmq. With Quartz, we can actually create jobs, and right now our jobs interval is actually 5 seconds. And what is our job doing? We have an Outbox job that runs every 5 seconds, and this job creates a DB connection and connect to our Rabbit. Right now Rabbit is in our local. First we read from the Outbox table where status ID is 1. If you remember, we were inserting with status 1. We create the SQL, then we get the data, and for every that data we are publishing our message to where the user cancelled queue. We are getting the user cancelled message and then publish that message to user cancelled queue. And then we are updating our outbox saying, okay, I have published this message, I'm done. So that is update outbox set our status ID to done, which is done is for this project history. That means we don't have to publish this message again, right? Then execute this DB connection query again. So let's start this project and publish our message to rabbitmq. Okay, the project is starting. Yes, the first debug hit. It's been 5 seconds and right now we are debugging. Okay, we are connecting our DB, then connect our Rabbit, and creating our channel to Rabbit, and then right now we are getting our data from the Outbox table. If you remember, we had one data in our table, and then for each message, right now we have one. We are publishing our message, right? Publish our message to user cancelled queue. Then update our Outbox entry to set to done. I'm setting to done, and okay, we are done. Now let's check out our database. Okay, in our database, let me refresh the data. Okay, right now our status is done. It's saying we have actually published our message to queue. And let's check out our rabbitmq. This is our user suspended queue. When we look at our queue and get our message, queue is empty. Why? Because our queue name is wrong. That is correct. Yes, we need to update it. Okay, in our queue, as you can see, we have one message. So we have published to correct queue. We are getting our message and see, this is our ID. And that is in a sense how Outbox Pattern works. So let's talk about some advanced stuff. First, as you can see, right now I'm getting the Outbox table that status ID is 1, right? I'm getting the data, publishing our message, and set our status to 3. But what happens if we have more than one project at the same time? That means they will get the same data, they will publish the same message twice, and then try to set the status ID to 3. So in order to avoid that, we can actually not select our data outbox again, but we can actually update the output. So we can update the data to status ID 2 and get the data, so no one can actually get that data, right? For example, set status ID 2 and output ID. So I get the ID that status ID is 2, then get the whole data and publish that message and set that status to 3. That means more than one project can get different data and publish that messages. They can work at the same time. The other feature is what happens if we fail at publishing our message, right? The queue could be still unavailable. That means we need to actually create a retry, and if we fail to publish message, we can actually set that status to fail. So we can actually create, for example, alerts, dashboards, and things like that. Another thing to consider in Outbox Pattern is this. Let's say we get the data from the Outbox, then we publish our message, but fail at setting status to 3. Then the job fails, and the next job starts. The job gets the data from Outbox again, publish the same data, and set the status to 3 from Outbox. That means we are publishing a message twice. That is the reason why I say this is at least once at the beginning of the video. But the consumers of these projects are idempotent, that shouldn't be a problem. And the last thing is, when will we delete our data? This is actually depends on our implementation. For example, maybe we need that data for 1 month or 2 months, or maybe we don't need the data at all, so we can delete that data after we are actually done. This is all implementation details. So this is in a sense what Outbox Pattern is. I will share the source code and Docker file script so you can actually run this project in your local and run with rabbitmq and MS SQL. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. May the force be with you.